Welcome to the WTEW Bible Studies. Today we're going to be covering the Secret Coming of Jesus, Part 2. So this is a three-part study. In Part 1, we covered people take the rapture chapter, 1 Thessalonians 4, 13 to 18. And they mix it in with John, chapters 14, 1 through 3. We covered that in Part 1. In Part 2, we're going to cover 1 Corinthians 15, 51 to 54. And people mix that in with the Thessalonians chapter as well. And these are just coming from totally different times, in my opinion. There's a lot of great Bible teachers that say now they're all the same event, but I don't believe that's the case. If you're familiar with 1 Thessalonians 4, 13, 18, that's great. I played Amir's video one time when he was talking about that. If you just want to read that so you can familiarize yourself with that. But now I'm going to go on and read 1 Corinthians 15, 51 to 54. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. So in Amir, when he's talking about 1 Thessalonians 4, 13 to 18, I'll show you how he mixes this passage in 1 Corinthians. Go ahead.
Us. But when we go up, nobody will see us. We'll be gone like that. All the excitement is not going to be here. Nobody will be excited that, oh, wow, look, there's a rapture. No. They'll probably say, God ridden. I mean, that's it. They're out of here. Finally, let's party. Guys, guess who is excited? No. Of course we are because it's us. But who is excited for our rapture? Heaven is expecting us. There is going.
Okay, did you see how Amir says it's all going to be invisible? We're going to go like that. That's what comes from 1 Corinthians. When 1 Corinthians says we're all going to be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, he confuses that moment. This is not a resurrection. This is not a rapture. This is a change. So it's only the change from mortal to immortality that goes in the blink of an eye. Not only that, but I'm going to show you that this is for a whole different time period than when Jesus returns. So the Secret Coming of Jesus, Part 2, will answer the following questions. What is the change in verse 51? What is the last trump of verse 52? When is death swallowed up in victory from verse 54? Is the last trump of verse 52 the seventh trumpet of Revelation? Who are the corruptible and mortal of verse 53? So what's the change in verse 51? People who will be alive at the time of the last trump will be changed from mortal to immortal. This change is the event that takes place in the twinkling of an eye. So this is the event that will be invisible because it'll happen so quickly. There's no evidence in these verses to support the idea that the resurrection will be invisible. There's also no mention of the rapture in these verses. Almost everybody reads the rapture into these verses, and it's just not there. So the change, Jesus went on the Mount of Transfiguration, and he was changed. And nobody saw the change, it just happened. So that change from like mortal to immortal, that's what this is talking about, something like a transfiguration. So what's the last trump of verse 52? So the first trump of God occurred in Genesis 1:3 when he said, let there be light. That was God's voice, the trumpet of God. And he was making things in creation. In Revelation, the trumpet of God is the voice of God the Father. In Revelation chapter 1, you see that. So when John's called up, it's to the voice of this trumpet voice. But Jesus' voice in Revelation 1:15, that's described as the sound of many waters. So there's different voices between the Father and the Son. And it's only the Father's voice that sounds like a trumpet. When the throne of God comes to earth with Jesus, there'll be lightnings, thunders, voices, and an earthquake. Revelation 8:5, 11:19, and 16:18 describe that. So two of the voices from the throne of God will be the voice like a trumpet from God the Father, and the voice of the sound of many waters from Jesus. So our First Thessalonians passage includes the trump of God, the return of Jesus, the resurrection of the dead, the change from mortal to more immortal, and the rapture. And everything but that change is visible. It's going to be heard. The trump there, that's not going to be the last sound from God. That's not going to be the last trump. So Jesus in the First Corinthians passage, he's already going to be on the earth. And that is because at the end of during the millennium, Jesus is going to reign on earth for 1,000 years. And then he's going to give the throne to God the Father. And God the Father says, well, I'm going to let Satan out of his prison for a little while. And Satan's going to gather all the earth, and they're going to come against Jesus in Jerusalem with all the saints. And it's going to be at that time, after that 1,000 years is ended, after Satan has been let out of his prison, that's when this last trumpet is going to sound. That's when death is defeated or is destroyed. So let's read this for context for the 1 Corinthians 15, 51 to 54. Context of that is found in 1 Corinthians 15, 21 to 28. For since by man came death, by man also came the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive, but every man in his own order. Christ the first fruits. So Christ was the first one that died and was made alive again. And then next, afterward, they that are Christ at his coming. So that's the 1 Thessalonians passage. When Christ comes, we're going to have people made alive again. And then verse 24, it says, then comes the end, when he shall have delivered up the kingdom to God, even the Father, when he shall have put down all rule and all authority and power. So at the end of the 1,000 years, Jesus has put down all rule and all authority and power, because it says he must reign till he put all enemies under his feet. But then it says the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death, for he has put all things under his feet. But when he says all things are put under him, it is manifest that he is accepted, which did put all things under him. That's God the Father. And when all things shall be subdued unto him, then shall also the Son himself be subject unto him that put all things under him, that God may be all in all. So in verses 22 and 23, all the dead, beginning with Adam, will be made alive at the coming of Christ. This is at the beginning of the 1,000-year reign. Verses 24 and 25, Jesus will put the earthly kingdom back into the hands of God the Father after he has reigned on earth for 1,000 years. And then verse 26, although Jesus will have power over death during his 1,000-year reign, death will not be destroyed at that time. Verses 27 and 28, God the Father will take control over the earth after Jesus has reigned for 1,000 years. So when is death swallowed up in victory? So the 20th chapter of the book of Revelation fills in the gaps of 1 Corinthians 15 and reveals when death will be swallowed up in victory. So if we look at Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 to 15, and when the 1,000 years are expired, that's that 1,000-year reign of Jesus on earth, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of who is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven, and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the heaven and earth fled away, and there was no place found for them. So this is the time. So at the sound of God's voice, that last trumpet, then heaven and earth just flee away, and all the dead are going to be in front of the throne of God. Picking back up to verse 12, and I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged, every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. This is when death is defeated. So death gets emptied out, heaven and earth disappear. There's not going to be any more of that. That's when this 1 Corinthians 15, 51 to 54 is taking place. So in verse 15, whoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. There's going to be no more hell. You're either going to be raised and be in heaven, or you're going to be raised and go into the lake of fire. And if you're alive, that's when you're going to be changed. That's what this Corinthians passage is talking about. So this is confirmed. The earth is going to be completely dissolved according to 2 Peter 3:7-13. But the heavens and the earth, which are now, by the same word, are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the judgment and perdition of ungodly men. But, beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are in shall be burned up. This is what happens at that last trump. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you be in all holy conversation and godliness, looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. All creation, it's going to completely be gone at this time. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness. So the new heavens and the new earth are revealed in chapters 21 and chapters 22 of the book of Revelation. 1 Corinthians, that's what this time is pointing to. Is the last trump of verse 52 the seventh trump of the book of Revelation? And that would be a big no. The last trump of 1 Corinthians is the voice of God the Father that will be heard on the last day of this present creation. The seventh trumpet of Revelation is the voice of the seventh angel. So you can find that in Revelation 10:7 and 11:15. So there's a big difference between the voice of an angel or the trumpet of an angel and the voice of God. Let's see. Who are the corruptible and mortal of verse 53 in 1 Corinthians? The corruptible are the dead. Our bodies decompose after we are died. Acts 2:31. He, seeing this before, spake of the resurrection of Christ, that his soul was not left in hell, neither his flesh did see corruption. So the only dead body that never decomposed was that of Jesus. All the rest of us, we decompose. And so we are corruptible. And the mortal, those are the ones that are alive. But they still can die. Ever since sin entered the world, everybody's been mortal and subject to death. And so in 1 Corinthians 15:51-54, behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. This is a new revelation. Not everyone will die, but both the dead and the living will be changed. That's what happens. That's what nobody will be able to see because it happens so fast. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound. Again, you'll be able to hear it. And so when God's voice comes, it makes mountains shake. The dead will be raised. So when Jesus died, we saw all those people coming out of the grave. So this is not going to be a secret thing. And they're going to be raised into bodies that can never die again. And we shall be changed. So the living are going to be changed into an immortal body. In the last moment of this creation, the voice of God the Father will raise the dead, give them bodies that will not decay, and the living will be given bodies that can't die. Verse 53, for this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So without a physical universe, the dead and the living have to have new eternal bodies. Otherwise, they would just be vanished. 54, so when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. So when the graves are emptied of their bodies and the living can no longer die, the last enemy of God will be destroyed. That's what this passage is talking about. So Jesus is already going to be on earth here for more than 1,000 years when these verses are fulfilled. So these verses are in no way connected to the return of Jesus, and we're waiting for that. Signs of that are all over the place. So that's going to be happening soon, but this other thing got another 1,000 years at least. So I just don't believe that you can blend these verses to come up with a secret rapture. That was it for part 2. We've got part 3 coming up where I'll just explain what happens in the 1 Thessalonians passage and how it says that over and over and over again in the Bible. the same things are repeated, it's all visible.